Well, what's up, guys? I am back, obviously after being away yesterday due to being under the weather. Now, as I say I was under the weather, I just, it's not the flu. I mean, I feel a little bit better than I was yesterday, but I'm still not 100%. I had a bit of a headache and everything yesterday. I think, the headache that I had yesterday was making me feel worse than anything else. I think that was what was doing me in yesterday. Was like headache was quite bad, and until I took some paracetamol in the evening, which seemed to kind of ease it off, and I didn't feel too bad after that. I think. I mean, obviously, I really didn't, I really didn't have any energy in me yesterday, which is why I didn't record or upload any videos yesterday. I did actually have 2 videos that I had planned to upload yesterday that didn't end up going out, that I didn't end up uploading because I didn't have the energy to actually record them and upload them. But obviously those 2 videos will be going out over the next couple of days, probably maybe one this afternoon, one in the evening I might do. So obviously, as I said, I hate being ill, and I think everyone does. Now this might seem weird, but I was one of those people when I was at school. I was one of those kids that used to hate being off school unwell. As most kids would bend their right arm to have a day off school ill, or especially if a test is coming up. Now, one thing I can say is I've never actually faked being ill. Because I was always aware that if you kept doing that, it could have potentially, nightmarish consequences. Because if you fake him being ill, there will come a day where you are actually genuinely ill, but people won't believe you. Because you faked being ill so many times. I guess faking being ill once isn't, necessarily a bad thing, and it's not gonna, have that kind of disastrous consequences, but it's not gonna have those disastrous consequences. But if you keep doing it, it could have, pretty severe consequences, which is why, it's not advised to do it so many times, because there will come a day where you are genuinely ill, and people won't believe you, I remember when I was at school one day, I came in, and there was a young girl in the reception area, and she was she was obviously unwell, she was obviously ill. You could tell by looking at her that she wasn't well. She was throwing up, into one of those, plastic bags that they used to give you at school to, puke into. She was throwing up into one of them. And her mum was talking to the lady receptionist, and she was saying to her that, the receptionist, the female receptionist was saying to her that that the little girl had to go home. She was in my year group, actually. I think we were in year 5 or 6 at the time. And her mum was saying to the woman in reception that she couldn't go home, she couldn't take the little girl home because she had something she needed to do or whatever, and there wouldn't be anyone at home to actually look after her. So she had to stay in school. And I kind of felt bad for her because, no child should have to stay in school, when they're really not well. And she was quite clearly really unwell, to the point where she needed to go home. Obviously the school obviously felt that she needed to go home because she was throwing up, she was being sick and all of that, and they couldn't keep her in school. But she couldn't go home because her mum was saying that there wouldn't be anyone at home to look after her. So she had to stay in school that whole day, basically isolated away from the rest of us and everything, but they didn't want any germs that she had to pass on to any of us. And, I remember thinking quite bad for it, because I remember thinking, she should be able to go home and rest, and get better, but she wasn't able to do that, because there wouldn't have been anyone that was according to what her mum was saying. There was no one at home to look after her, Then there was another day, but this was when we were in year 2. And we were going out on a school trip on this particular day, we were going out to the London Eye. We were going on the London Eye. And one of the boys in my class came in with his mum, and his mum spoke to the teacher. And she said to the teacher that he'd had diarrhea that morning. And she said to the teacher, oh, he's been having diarrhea and he's still going on the trip. And the teacher was like, no, he can't. He can't take that risk. What is she was saying, like the teacher was saying to her, what if we get all the way up to the top of the London Eye and he messes himself? There won't be anything we can do. But his mum was saying to her, he'll be fine. But she was saying, and then the tutor was saying to her, no, he can't go. He can't go on that trip. If he's had diarrhea like that, it's just too risky. Which I don't blame her for saying that, because obviously it was that case of the fact that we were going up on the London Eye, and it was like, what if we got all the way to the top of the London Eye and he'd messed himself? There wouldn't have been anything anyone could do, in that sort of situation. So it was obviously a good idea that he didn't go. I've been hospital countless times ill, due to ill health. Same with my sister, she had to miss some time hospital ill. Our mum was really good when we were ill. Like, she always used to give us warm soup. That was one of the things that she used to give us. I remember the last time I felt ill was when I had my COVID booster. Now, the thing was, when I had my COVID vaccines, the first one I had was the Pfizer. The second one I had was the Pfizer. When I had the COVID booster, I had the Moderna. And I think what the problem was, my body wasn't used to the Moderna vaccine, so it kind of caused a few negative side effects. Like, I was okay during the day, I felt absolutely fine, but it got to about 10, 11 o'clock that night, and I started to feel really ill. Like, I had a headache, had a temperature, my muscles were aching. And I remember waking my mum up, and I was saying to my mum, I don't feel well. And she went downstairs and she got some medication, she gave me some medication, and a drink, and she said, have that, try and get some sleep. Which I did manage to get some sleep, but, it was a nightmare. Like, when I had the first COVID vaccine, which was the Pfizer, the only effect I had with that was I started to feel really, really tired in the evening. I remember I was at my nan's that night watching the football, and I remember feeling really, really, tired that morning. Tired that night. I was, laying on the sofa, but I was falling asleep. I don't remember having any side effects with the second vaccine. I think I was pretty much okay with the second vaccine, apart from again, I think, if anything, I only felt a little bit sleepy. I was laying on my bed for most of that day, which was the same sort of situation yesterday. It was I felt so, I felt like I had that kind of lack of energy yesterday. I didn't feel like I had any energy in me whatsoever. But, and I hate feeling like that. I hate feeling like I have no energy in me to actually be able to do anything. Because I don't want to feel like that. I don't think it's anything like the COVID or the flu or anything like that, because I don't feel as bad as I did yesterday. I think if it was like COVID or the flu or anything, I think I'd still be feeling quite rough today. But today I don't feel as bad as I did yesterday. I don't really have as much of a headache as I did yesterday. I do feel a little bit better this morning, than I did yesterday throughout the day. But as I said, I think it was the headache that made me feel worse than anything else yesterday, to be fairly honest. The last time I was, in bed ill, was a good... I'd say it was a good 4 or 5 years. No, it wasn't that long ago. It was, I think it might have been earlier on in the year, actually. I remember being, I remember being in bed, not feeling well at all. one night, I remember, I think it was either this year or last year, I can't remember when. I also remember going back to December 1st of December 2019. I remember the day well, it was the day that me and my dad went out to an Elvis concert, like they were doing like an Elvis concert with an orchestra and everything at the O2. My dad had booked tickets for me and him to go to that. So we got obviously on that Sunday. I felt absolutely fine during the day. Like I hadn't felt unwell or anything like that. There wasn't any reason why I would go to the concert that night because I wasn't feeling ill. Like I felt absolutely fine. Even when I left here that night, I felt fine. Like it wasn't until we got to the O2 Arena when we got to our seats. That was when it all started to kind of come on. Within like an hour of the show starting, I started to feel like this really bad headache coming on. And I just thought I was a little bit dehydrated because I hadn't had a drink since we left here that evening, and I thought that's what I needed. By the time I got back here that evening, I felt so rough. And I thought, I'll go to bed and I'll go to bed and I might be feeling a bit better in the morning. Not knowing that I was going to be basically off school for over a week with a severe bout of the flu. But what was funny, I remember, was that most of the symptoms I had were very similar to the symptoms you would have with COVID, or that would be attributed to COVID. But it wasn't COVID at the time, it was flu. Which was, obviously, for all I know, it had been COVID. I remember around that time a lot of people were, falling ill with what was being described as a respiratory illness, which could very well have been COVID, not that we knew it at the time, but it could very well have been. Because we don't know like how long COVID was, how long COVID had been in the UK for. By that time, it had been in the UK for a while. COVID, thankfully, I've only had COVID once, and it did knock me out. It made me feel very tired, and I was off school I was off college for 4 days. And I think it was a bad time because I tested positive for COVID on the Friday, and then my granddad was rushed into the hospital on the Sunday. So it was bad timing, and then my mum got COVID a week later, and she couldn't go into the hospital like the whole time. She was so unwell. That was like the second time she had it. I think she's had it in total she's had it 3 times now. She had it in 2020. She had it last year, and then she had it a few weeks ago. She had COVID, and I should say a couple of months ago, she had COVID, again for the 3rd time. But thankfully, I've only ever had COVID once. I remember my great nan nearly actually died from COVID. So obviously what it was the day after my birthday, in 2021. I remember my mum woke me up that morning doing a COVID test, and she told me that my nan and my great nan had both tested positive for COVID that morning, which is why we all needed to be tested. Because the thing was, we'd all been around my nan the previous day, so we all had to be tested and everything. Thankfully, my test came back negative, my uncle came back negative, my dad tested, he was negative, my granddad tested, he was negative. The only 3 people that tested positive for it at that time were my mum, my nan, and my great nan. My mum didn't test positive until about 2 days after. She took a COVID test on, I think it was the Friday. And it came back on the Thursday. She took the COVID test on the Thursday, and it came back positive. As I remember, it was around the same time I had to go for my second COVID vaccine, because I'd already had one in September, And then there was obviously like about a 3-month, like a 2-month gap between the vaccine. So I had the first one in the September and had the second one in the November. And then obviously that was around the time that my mum, my nan and my great-nan came down with COVID. And so my dad had to take me down to my vaccine done. Because we were the only ones that hadn't actually tested positive for COVID, obviously, apart from my granddad, of course. Now, I remember it was obviously when they got my nan into the hospital, my great-nan into the hospital, and the doctor had actually said that if had we not gotten her into the hospital when we did, she would have died, you know. I mean, obviously, you know, it's scary to think about, but there you go. I mean, obviously, as I said, I'm feeling, you know, a lot better than I was. You know, I'm allowed to not be feeling as unwell as I was yesterday. You know, I'm actually allowed to be feeling a little bit better today, but, you know, I mean, I didn't like being ill. So, yeah. I mean, obviously, as I said, I used to hate being off school ill. Now, I know that probably does sound weird because most kids would bend their right arm to be off school ill, especially if there was like a test or something coming up, but I never used to like being off school ill. Like, I didn't mind if I had to leave school because I had a hospital appointment or a doctor's appointment, and that was fair enough. But I never used to like being off school ill. But there's probably a lot of people out there that would probably be the opposite to that and would probably, you know, have loved being off school ill. But I wasn't one of those people. I think the thing with me back then was I was a bit of a goody two-shoes teacher's pet, you know, and you know, I was a bit of a suck-up to the teachers and a bit of a swot, as people would say. But that didn't bother me. I knew that people would think, oh, I was a bit of a goody two-shoes, you know, suck-up teacher's pet swot. But that didn't, you know, it didn't really bother me, you know, it didn't really bother me that people, you know, if people thought that about me, but, you know, as far as I was concerned, you know, at least I could say, I actually cared about my education, which is more than could be said for most of the kids that were in my class, especially at secondary school. I felt like I cared had more about my education than most of the other boys did. There was one boy in my class, Brandon his name was, this was when I was in Harder. He did nothing but sleep in every lesson. You know, he wasn't bothered about his education. Most of the boys weren't. But I was. I was one of the very few students in the school who actually gave a damn about their education. You know, I mean, as I said, you know, being off school ill, it sucked. For me, it did suck anyway. You know, I never liked being in bed ill, and I don't think anyone does. But there you go. I hope you enjoyed this little video, and I'll see you for another one in the afternoon, probably. Catch you later. Bye-bye.